3 true stories that will keep you awake. It's late, much later than you intended to stay up. The house is quiet, the kind of quiet that feels heavy, like the world itself is holding its breath. You're alone, or at least you think you are. The faint hum of the refrigerator downstairs has stopped, and the only sound is the occasional creak of the floorboards settling. You tell yourself it's nothing, just the usual noises of an old house. But then something changes. A chill runs down your spine, though the room isn't cold. Your skin prickles and you can't shake the feeling that you're being watched. You glance toward the doorway, half expecting to see someone, or something, standing there. But there's nothing, just darkness. And yet, the feeling doesn't go away. It lingers, growing stronger, as if the shadows themselves are alive, waiting for you to let your guard down. This is the moment when reality begins to blur, when the ordinary becomes anything but. And it's in moments like these that the stories I'm about to share begin. These aren't tales crafted to thrill or entertain. They're not urban legends or campfire stories meant to send a shiver down your spine before you laugh it off. These are real accounts of events that happen to real people, in real places, under circumstances that defy logic and explanation. They're the kind of stories that stay with you, that creep into your thoughts when you're alone in the dark, making you question what you thought you knew about the world. They're the stories that remind us that sometimes the most terrifying things aren't the ones we can see, but the ones we can only feel. Over the next few minutes, I'm going to take you through 3 such stories. Each one is rooted in truth, documented by those who experienced them, and each one will leave you with more questions than answers. These are stories of encounters that can't be explained, of moments that challenge our understanding of reality, and of forces that seem to exist just beyond the edge of our perception. They're stories that will make you wonder if the world is truly as it seems, or if there's something else out there, something we can't quite comprehend. So, as you listen, I want you to imagine yourself in the shoes of those who lived through these events. Picture the quiet before the storm, the moment when everything changed, and the aftermath that left them forever altered. And as you do, ask yourself this: what would you do if it happened to you? How would you react if the world you thought you knew suddenly shifted, revealing something far more unsettling beneath the surface? This is not just a story. This is a journey into the unknown. And by the time it's over, you might find yourself looking at the world and the darkness in a very different way. So, sit back, listen closely, and prepare to step into the shadows. What you're about to hear are not stories born from imagination or crafted to entertain. These are real accounts, events that have been documented, investigated, and retold by those who lived through them. They are stories of unexplained phenomena, of moments that defy logic, and of encounters that leave even the most skeptical among us questioning what we think we know about the world. These are the kinds of stories that linger in the back of your mind, that resurface when you're alone in the dark, and that make you wonder if the line between reality and the unknown is as clear as we'd like to believe. Each of the 3 stories I'm going to share with you tonight is unique, but they all share one thing in common. They challenge our understanding of the world. They force us to confront the possibility that there are forces at work beyond our comprehension, forces that don't follow the rules of science or reason. These are stories of ordinary people who found themselves in extraordinary circumstances, facing things that can't easily be explained away. As you listen, I want you to imagine yourself in their shoes. Picture the quiet before the storm, the moment when everything changed, and the aftermath that left them forever altered. These stories are not just about fear. They're about the fragility of our perception, the limits of our understanding, and the unsettling realization that we may not be as in control as we think we are. So, as we begin, I invite you to turn off the lights, settle in, and let yourself be drawn into these tales. But be warned. Once you hear them, you may find yourself looking at the world and the darkness in a very different way. This is not just a collection of stories. This is a journey into the unknown. And by the time it's over, you might find yourself questioning whether you're truly alone in the dark. Story 1. The Haunted Farmhouse. Our first story takes us to a small, rural town in Ohio, where a family of 4 moved into an old farmhouse. The house had been abandoned for years, its previous owners vanishing without a trace. The family was drawn to the property by its charm and the promise of a fresh start. But from the very first night, they began to notice things. Small, unsettling things that they couldn't quite explain. It started with the sounds. At first, they were easy to dismiss. The creak of a floorboard, the rustle of the wind against the windows. But then the whispers began. Soft at first, almost imperceptible, but growing louder with each passing night. The children were the first to hear them. They would wake up screaming, claiming that a woman in white was standing at the foot of their beds, staring at them with hollow eyes. The parents tried to reassure them, to explain it away as nightmares, but deep down, they couldn't shake the feeling that something was terribly wrong. One night, the father decided to set up a camera in the hallway, determined to catch whatever or whoever was causing the disturbances. What he saw on the footage the next morning left him paralyzed with fear. The video showed a shadowy figure crawling on all fours, moving slowly but deliberately toward the children's room. The figure paused at the door, as if sensing the camera, before vanishing into thin air. When the father checked the room, the door was locked from the inside. The family moved out the very next day, leaving everything behind. To this day, no one knows who or what was haunting that farmhouse. The property remains abandoned, a silent reminder of the horrors that unfolded within its walls. Story 2. The Abandoned Asylum. If you think that was unsettling, wait until you hear what happened in the abandoned asylum. In the 1950s, Willowbrook Asylum was a place of despair. It housed patients who were deemed beyond help, and rumors of abuse, neglect, and unexplained deaths were rampant. The asylum was shut down under mysterious circumstances, with many of its records lost or destroyed. Decades later, the building still stands, a decaying monument to its dark past. Over the years, urban explorers and paranormal investigators have ventured inside, drawn by the allure of the unknown. But few have returned unchanged, and some haven't returned at all. One such group of explorers decided to investigate Willowbrook, armed with cameras, flashlights, and a sense of adventure. They were skeptical, convinced that the stories of hauntings were nothing more than urban legends. But what they encountered would challenge their beliefs and leave them with a story they would never forget. At first, the exploration seemed uneventful. The group documented the crumbling walls, the rusted beds, and the eerie silence that filled the halls. But as they ventured deeper into the asylum, the atmosphere began to change. The air grew colder, and their breath became visible, despite it being a warm summer night. Their equipment started malfunctioning. Flashlights flickered, cameras shut off, and their walkie-talkies emitted nothing but static. One of the explorers, a man named Jake, swore he saw a figure standing at the end of a long hallway. It was tall and thin, its silhouette barely visible in the dim light. The figure didn't move, it just stood there, as if waiting. Jake called out to it, but there was no response. When he turned to his friends to point it out, the figure was gone. The group pressed on, determined to uncover the truth. But the deeper they went, the more oppressive the atmosphere became. They began to hear faint cries for help, echoing through the empty corridors. The cries were soft at first, almost like a whisper, but they grew louder and more desperate with each passing minute. One of the explorers, a woman named Sarah, claimed she heard her name being called, though no one else had spoken. The group decided to split up to cover more ground, a decision they would soon regret. Jake and Sarah went to the upper floors, while the others stayed on the ground level. It wasn't long before Jake and Sarah realized they weren't alone. The cries for help turned into guttural screams, and the temperature dropped so low that they could see their breath. They tried to leave, but the corridors seemed to shift and twist, as if the building itself was alive and working against them. Jake and Sarah finally found their way back to the ground floor, but their relief was short-lived. As they regrouped with the others, they noticed something strange about the footage they had recorded. In one frame, a pale face was visible, peering out from behind a door. The face was gaunt, with hollow eyes and a twisted expression. But when they were there, the hallway had been completely empty. The group decided to leave immediately, but as they made their way to the exit, they heard a voice. a voice that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. It was low and guttural, repeating the same phrase over and over. "You'll never leave." They ran, their footsteps echoing through the empty halls. But the voice followed them, growing louder and more insistent with every step. The explorers finally made it out of the asylum, but the experience left them deeply shaken. They never returned to Willowbrook, and to this day, they refuse to speak about what happened inside. Some say the spirits of the asylum are still searching for their next victims, trapped in a never-ending cycle of suffering. The building remains abandoned, a silent reminder of the horrors that unfolded within its walls. Story 3: The Forest of Whispers. And finally, the story of a forest where people have vanished without a trace. Deep in the heart of Blackwood Forest, there is a place where the trees grow unnaturally close together, their gnarled branches forming a canopy so thick that sunlight rarely touches the ground. Locals call it the Forest of Whispers, and for good reason. Over the years, hikers and campers have reported hearing faint whispers in the trees, voices that seem to come from nowhere and everywhere at once. Some say it's the wind. Others believe it's the forest itself, alive and watching. But those who have ventured too deep often don't return to tell their tale. One couple, Mark and Emily, decided to camp in the forest despite the warnings. They were experienced hikers, drawn to the mystery of the whispers and the beauty of the untouched wilderness. They set up their tent in a small clearing, unaware that they were about to experience something that would change their lives forever. The first few hours were peaceful. The forest was quiet, save for the occasional rustle of leaves or the distant call of an owl. But as night fell, the atmosphere began to change. The air grew heavy, and the silence became oppressive. Mark and Emily tried to brush it off, attributing it to the isolation of the forest. But then, they heard it. A faint whisper, so soft it was almost imperceptible. At first, they thought it was the wind, but the whispers grew louder, forming words they couldn't quite understand. Emily tried to laugh it off, but Mark couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. They decided to turn in for the night, hoping the morning would bring clarity. But as they lay in their tent, the whispers returned, this time accompanied by the sound of footsteps circling their campsite. The footsteps were slow and deliberate, as if someone or something was pacing just outside the tent. Mark grabbed a flashlight and unzipped the tent, determined to confront whatever was out there. But when he stepped outside, the forest was empty. The whispers stopped, and the footsteps faded into silence. Just as he was about to go back inside, he noticed something in the trees. Dozens of shadowy figures stood among the trees, their forms barely visible in the moonlight. They didn't move, didn't speak. They just stood there, watching. Mark and Emily packed up their campsite as quickly as they could, their hands trembling as they struggled to fold the tent. The whispers returned, louder now, forming words that sent chills down their spines. "Stay. Join us." They ran, their footsteps echoing through the silent forest. But no matter how fast they moved, the whispers followed them, growing louder and more insistent. After what felt like hours, Mark and Emily finally reached their car. They threw their gear into the back seat and sped away, their hearts pounding in their chests. But as they drove, Emily noticed something carved into the passenger side door. The words were jagged, as if scratched by a desperate hand. "You'll never leave." They didn't stop until they were miles away from the forest, but even then, they couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. The whispers lingered in their minds, a constant reminder of what they had encountered. To this day, they refuse to speak about what happened in the Forest of Whispers, and they never returned to Blackwood. The Forest of Whispers remains a place of mystery and fear. Those who enter often don't return, and those who do are forever changed. Some say the forest is alive, feeding on the fear of those who dare to venture inside. Others believe it's a gateway to something far darker, a place where the line between our world and the next is dangerously thin. Whatever the truth may be, one thing is certain: the Forest of Whispers is not a place for the curious or the brave. It's a place where the shadows have voices, and those voices never let go. We've just uncovered the chilling secrets of Willowbrook Asylum, but the night is far from over. I want to hear from you. Which story has been the most unsettling so far? Was it the haunted farmhouse, where a family faced an unspeakable presence? Or the abandoned asylum, where shadows came to life? Let me know in the comments below. I read every single one. And if you're brave enough, keep watching. If these true stories sent chills down your spine, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell. Every day, I bring you the most terrifying tales, stories that are not just meant to scare, but to make you question what lies beyond the veil of our reality. The world is full of mysteries, and together, we'll uncover them all. And remember, sometimes, the scariest stories are the ones that are true. So, until next time, keep your lights on, your doors locked, and your curiosity alive. Because you never know what's waiting in the shadows. Now it's your turn. Imagine yourself in the shoes of the family from the haunted farmhouse. Would you have stayed after hearing those whispers in the night? Or would you have packed your bags and run like they did? Let me know in the comments below. I'm curious to hear what you would do. And if you've ever experienced something unexplainable, share your story. Your experiences might just be the inspiration for a future video. After hearing these stories, do you believe in ghosts? Or do you think there's a logical explanation for what happened in the farmhouse, the asylum, and the forest of whispers? Let me know in the comments. I love hearing your theories. Whether you're a skeptic or a believer, there's no denying that these stories make us question what we think we know about the world. If you think these stories were terrifying, wait until you hear about the cursed object that brought terror to everyone who owned it. From unexplained accidents to chilling visions, this object has a history of destruction and despair. Don't miss the next video. It might just be the scariest story yet. If you know someone who loves a good scare, share this video with them. But be warned, they might not sleep tonight.